LittleBigPlanet is a multiplayer game. There are many puzzles that have been designed with this in mind, meant to be impossible to complete with a single player. So let's ignore that and see how many of them we can actually beat all on our own with only one Sackperson. No controller switching. A lot of people thought Skate to Victory would be impossible with how there's no way to press both buttons at once, and seemingly no way to jump up to the prizes. But surprisingly, it is possible. By taking the sponge from the basket outside, you can bring it into the castle, past the first boot, and then over to the second one, where we then abuse the indestructibility of the story level's objects by positioning the sponge underneath the boot as it comes down so that they clip into each other, to launch us on top of the boot while still holding onto it. Then, despite how heavy the sponge is, if we drag it off at the perfect time while having it land on top of us, we can barely push it up to the next ledge. We then get the sponge onto this boot by doing the same thing as before, where by then having it land on us again as we jump off, we can very carefully balance it on our heads until making it all the way over to the next wall. One more good push then gets the sponge onto this final ledge, where we can now freely drag it over to the multiplayer section, and a left corner jump off of it to collect the prizes, all with only one player. Swinging Safari solution is already very well known, where instead of using the button, another left corner jump can get you up to the first set of prizes, where then repeatedly pressing the button up here will eventually release the second set down to the left with how they bounce and roll off of each other, where you can then collect them to complete the section. We can't make it through the door in time in Burning Forest on our own, but it turns out that the enemy here is actually just as good as another Sackperson, because just by pushing them over a bit, we're able to have them hold the door open for us after we press the button. From here, we can walk into the room, and simply do another left corner jump to make it all the way up to the prizes. For the Meerkat Kingdom, it's actually enough to just wave the door down yourself, and then despawn to barely make it in before it closes after you come back. But a cooler solution, I think, is to use the debris found throughout the level to keep it weighed down that way, avoiding the despawn altogether. Once inside, it's not very hard to get onto the left side of the block, and quickly jump off of it before it completely retracts to make it up to the prizes. Although this area doesn't explicitly say that it requires multiple players, I'm still counting it because it definitely hasn't been designed to be done solo. We can do it pretty easily though by again using any of the pieces of debris to activate the meerkat while we're in the right spot. Then the third multiplayer section for this level has the same meerkats, so it's very easy to just use Stripey Tail to get launched upwards, getting the prize on the left, then the ones on the right by jumping onto the sponge, then swinging off the lights. In the wedding reception, you're meant to use a friend to keep this platform weight down as you take turns climbing up the sponges. But with enough skill and use of momentum, it's really not that hard to climb up yourself until reaching the main sponge to release the prizes. Either that, or you just jump from the previous ledge to go straight for the skull. The biggest issue in the darkness is getting past the elevator, since you can't really get up after letting go of the skull, but this can be avoided just by jumping off the tiny safe spot on the first spike block. After this, you can move over to the left, do a trip jump next to the button to get over the wall, collect those prizes, then move back to the right and do the same thing with the spike block a few more times to collect the rest of the mid-air prizes. Or you can do this thing where you take the skull from earlier with you and left corner jump off of it, or just do a banana jump to reach the prizes. The second area for this level is pretty easy because all you need to do is left corner jump off of Don Lu to make it up to the ledge. In Boomtown, they intentionally made it impossible to keep the minecarts in the same place while you go for the lever. But funnily, a really easy way to avoid this completely is to rearrange some of the trigger explosives from the town section so that they're in front of the bank, and detonate them. This ends up setting off the bombs holding up the prizes too, which then lets you go back down to the area to collect them. A couple roll into this pit, but you can just sacrifice a few lives to get them. The second area normally has two people in separate rooms working together to reach the bottom with impact explosives, with even the door for one of the rooms needing cooperation. Except just by pushing the button in a certain way and being very fast, you can get in on your own. So then, if you just put enough bombs in the tunnel beforehand, you can do the entire thing with only a single player until collecting the prizes at the bottom, where it then even lets you escape. The mines has probably the easiest co-op section to do solo, where just by standing in the right spot and jumping, you can push the lever back to raise the bridge and change layer onto it at the same time to get the single prize. The second section is a bit harder, where normally the lock would fall back down too quickly to be able to move the wheel, but if you're just fast enough with the drop down, it's still pretty easy to make it work on your own. After this, you can skip the entire rest of the puzzle just by doing a left corner jump off the lever to reach the prizes. Serpentrine's multiplayer area requires a lot of cooperation to avoid being burnt 3 different times, which makes it pretty hard. But by conserving our falling speed and going very quickly, you can make it all the way to the last sponge, where a perfectly timed jump then lets the serpent boost you upwards to on top of it. From here, all you need to do is get a good enough jump off the sponge to reach the ledge, where the prizes are then collected pretty easily. Lowrider requires a lot of back and forth movement, but it's still fine, since just by moving the car and its sponge into the middle of the first pit, you're able to swing all the way across in one go. From here, you can pull the lever to open the door and collect this prize while death abusing. We then drive the car again, collect the next few prizes, and do one last swing to collect the final one for the area while dying again. The actual puzzle section of Subway's co-op area isn't really a problem at all with how just getting a perfect LCJ can skip the entire thing. What is a problem though is getting into the room in the first place, with how you're meant to press this button to spin the vent while someone else moves through. As far as I know, there unfortunately isn't any way to do this with a single player, but here are some ideas for how it might work. The vent is in the front layer, and so are these boxes at the start of the level. So if you were able to get one of them all the way down here, you could put it in there, where it would then fall onto the button inside of the room, keeping the vent turned on. When you try moving the box though, after you manage to get it past the first checkpoints, you get stopped by the second, as there just isn't enough room to go over it. If you did get it past though, you could then push it in front of a subway, where it ends up moving the box all the way to here. Then if you somehow found a way to get out of bounds to stand on the box, it is actually possible to move across the electricity with it, fall down here while surviving, then push it to the left as it falls off this ledge so that it lands on the crane, to then move it using the lever, to finally get it into the multiplayer area. But this is pretty far from actually working, so for now, this is our first impossible section. In the construction site, the gap over to the block isn't that big, so you can just position the platform in the middle and jump over to it. As for the prizes on top of the crane, we can actually avoid using the block altogether by using several bounce jumps and taking a specific path to make it out of bounds, getting all the way to on top of the level, where it's then easy to fall down to the prizes. After raising the elevator a bit in Endurance Dojo, you can left corner jump onto it, then right corner jump off to reach the wheel to collect those prizes. Then for the ones that are actually a part of the puzzle, for some reason the roof is just partially open, so you can climb up here by jumping off the green platforms, then jump across the golden pillars until reaching the box that the prizes are in. Sensei's Lost Castle is another pretty easy one with how, after you swing up to the area, all you have to do is left corner jump off the sponge to make it up to the ledge, where you can then collect all of the prizes. Despite all of the fire in the Terribaloni's volcano, you can completely avoid the button just by getting super lucky, letting us collect the first prize, where it then gets a bit complicated. You can get onto the car on your own, but there's no way to move the lever that controls it once you're here. The only thing that you can do is jump and run back and forth heaps where, over time, the car will very slowly move forward. So theoretically, you could just keep doing this until the fire gets in the way, which is pretty good progress. The prizes are placed pretty inconveniently though. We can jump over to underneath them, but fire boosting does not give us enough height. If we manage to reach the left wall though, it lets us very lightly jump, where I was able to get both of the prizes, barely making for another one that's possible to do solo. The Dancer's Court is pretty hopeless. We can't get up this area without the buttons being pressed for us, and there aren't really any objects that we can use to hold them down. If you manage to get up the first ledge, you could left corner jump to get this prize, but we can't. You'd probably have to find a way to get onto one of the 2 walls that enclose the area, which we also can't do, so this one just isn't happening. Like in Subway, the actual puzzle section for Elephant Temple is very easy to do with a single player, just by dropping down after pushing the lever to then jump across the pillars. It's just getting into the area that's the problem. The regular entrance doesn't work at all since we need to be activating 2 grab sensors at once. And there are ways to break into the area by getting out of bounds in certain places, but these require having more than one Sackperson too, so sadly, this one is also going to be impossible for us. Great Magician's Palace is one of the most impossible looking ones with the amount of height we need to get just to make it past the first half of the puzzle, which we definitely can't do normally with the placement of the buttons. If we take a look over here though, we can see that the exit for the area is much lower, and something that we might be able to actually reach. The only question is, how? Well, I found that if you manage to get out of the falling block section as fast as possible, there's actually just barely enough time to set up a left corner jump off the second last falling block. it just doesn't give us enough height, so we have to combine it with a trip jump, letting us easily make it up to the glass. From here, we keep going up and time a jump off the slope to reach the last set of platforms of the area. This lets us get half of the prizes, so then to get the rest, after spawning these 2 blocks in the back layer with the player sensors, we can quickly set up a bounce jump to make it all the way up there, letting us collect the rest. The frozen tundra also seems pretty impossible with how you're meant to press 4 buttons at once to activate the elevator, grab 4 things at once to open a door, and then use the weight of several people to press a button that fires rockets. Well, surprisingly, by getting out of bounds at an earlier point in the level, we can actually find the logic that controls both the door and the rockets. So just by knocking these things down in the right way, we can bypass 2 out of 3 of our problems. So then for the elevator, like the previous level, the exit for the area is actually pretty accessible, where just by doing a left corner jump off the soldier in a certain way, we can make it to the glass and climb the entire way up, completely skipping the elevator, where we find that the door is also open, and the rockets have gone off, letting us collect the prizes all on our own. The bunker has 2 puzzles joined together, and both of them don't have a lot going for them with how the only way to reach the prizes is through the intended path, which we have no way of completing with how we need to be able to activate the levers and button while being nowhere near them. You can get out of bounds using the tank, but it isn't useful at all. The only thing I see maybe working is trying to clip through some of the walls using the speed that the tank gives you, but I still don't see this actually happening. Then finally we have the Collector's Lair, which is actually similar to the Dancer's Court, since without being able to press the buttons how we're supposed to, there just isn't any way to get up to the prizes. I got kind of close by doing a bounce jump thing. I don't think it will happen though. But again, if we somehow manage to get onto either of the 2 walls surrounding the area, it would be free. It's just, I can't find any way up there. There is a moving platform that we can get on the left side, but the wall is still super tall. And getting on top of the goddess might work to get on the right side, maybe, but I really doubt it. Making this one close, but just not possible. So based on my count, this means that we were able to complete 20 out of 26 co-op areas with only a single Sackperson from the 21 different levels that have them. I think the most surprising ones were definitely Skate to Victory and Great Magician's Palace, as it felt like those ones only barely worked, making it kind of disappointing how some of the areas that should have been very simple ended up not working at all, like the Dancer's Court. If you do allow controller switching though, then all of these are possible. I had a lot of fun doing this. It was nice being able to discover some new things for what I'm sure nearly everyone who used to play this game had already tried. And also, thank you to Anthony Hack for suggesting this idea and helping out with most of the areas. Thanks for watching.